welcome to our flower communion, which you'll hear more about soon. Welcome to our fellowship. Like most churches I know of, we're about fellowship, we're about spiritual enlightenment, and we're about service. But there's something that makes us a little bit alternative, in that our sources of wisdom are many and varied. The religions of the world, your own direct experience, prophetic voices, earth-centered religions, and heeding science and reason. So welcome. You like that? You're in the right place. I'll light the chalice now. The elements of fire, oxygen, fuel, heat. Chalice can symbolize many things, but perhaps the oxygen symbolizes our fellowship. The fuel, our spiritual journey, and the heat, our desire and our performance of service. Now stand if you're able and sing our opening hymn, page 123. Now I'd like to welcome up the children and Thomas Hoskins to tell the story.
Yes. Come on. It's Thomas Hoskins. Come on. That's me. Yeah. You're gonna love it. Oh, they're gonna miss out? All right, you can stay there. I'll speak loud enough that you can hear. Okay, so I'm going to tell a story of Frog and Toad. I bet you've heard Frog and Toad stories in the past, have you? Are you familiar with Frog and Toad? Anybody else? Well, of course, right? So the book is written in an English affect. And so I read it with an English accent. And as many of you know, Frog and Toad have two distinct personalities. Frog is more upbeat, and he tends to be optimistic. And Toad, he's slower to speak, and he's never quite satisfied. Much like in relationships, there's always people on either side of that spectrum. Which my wife and I identify with Frog, surprise. And Heidi's more of a Toad. But it's like wonderful, we're all special, right? Well, this is the story of Frog and Toad. So one day, Toad is walking down the path, and he comes to his friend Frog's yard, and he looks in, and there are flowers everywhere, green vines and everything, multiple colors. He says, I wish I had a garden as beautiful as you have, Frog. And Frog says, yes, it is a beautiful garden. I'm glad you like it. You can have one. And Toad says, I could never. My yard looks terrible. Well, Frog says, you know, if you put in a lot of hard work, all it takes is some seeds and some hard work. Toad says, well, I do wish I had a garden like yours. So the frog gives him a handful of seeds. And Toad, straight away, runs home. He gets home and he starts putting in the hard work. He prepares beds and he pulls weeds and he just cleans the whole place up and makes nice little furrowed rows, and into which he plants his seeds. And he plants his final seed and he stands back and he says, okay, seeds, grow! And he watches. And none of them start to grow. It still looks exactly the same as it did. He ponders and he says, okay, seeds, grow! Even louder into the wind. Nothing happens. Well, Toad, or Frog, hears what's all the commotion. He comes, Toad, whatsoever is happening over here? And Toad says, oh, well, I planted my garden and I am ready for them to grow. He says, well, you're being so loud, you probably frightened them from coming up. You must let it rain, and you must let the sun shine, and you must wait. So Toad says, okay, so he goes in and he prepares lunch. He takes a nap. And just before he goes to bed that night, he looks out his window and he sees to see if his plants have grown yet, and they have not. And he gets worried for the seeds. My seeds are probably frightened for the darkness. So he goes out and he lights candles. He sits and he waits and he reads some stories until he falls asleep in the garden. And he wakes up in the morning and he looks around and still nothing. So he thinks to himself, well, maybe I should entertain the seeds. So he plays the violin to them all day, and in the afternoon it rains. And still, no flowers. And the next day he goes out and he says, I will read them stories. And he reads them many great stories and poems all throughout the day, and the sun shines and it is warm and bright. And he looks all around, and still, no plants. And he takes a nap underneath a mulberry tree. And he wakes up, and Toad, or Frog is saying, Toad, wake up, you must see what's happening. And Toad looks all around, and by golly, all of his little plants are just little tiny babies, just barely perching up from the soil. He says, look at your garden, it is coming along. And Toad crosses his arms and he says, I've done a lot of hard work. And then he goes home and goes to sleep. And then,
next morning,
they were all giant flowers. The end. If the children would exit through the back door over there. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna put the back to my hand. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Thank you, Thomas.
Whoa.
I'd like to welcome anybody visiting, maybe here for the first time, second time, haven't been here in a while. You want to stand up and say, hey, I'm here. But I'd also like to welcome Dr. Vivian Djokotoe, our speaker today. Lovely to have you. Anybody? So great. Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Kathy Beckwith. It's back.
It's back.
Yeah. Well, I'm here for now. We just got back from India a couple of days ago, and awesome Tad Beckwith is here. My son, and he and his family just got back from Spain. We did our family sabbaticals at the same time, so that when we got home, we'd have each other too. So we're glad to be here.
Welcome. Glad you're here. And now it's time for our flower communion. Shantae Frisbee will lead us in that. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Our unique Unitarian Universalist flower communion was first introduced 100 years ago.
The first flower ceremony, sometimes referred as a flower communion or a flower festival, is an annual ritual that celebrates beauty, human uniqueness, diversity, and community, held in Prague, led by Reverend Norbert Djokote. He introduced this special service on June 4th, 1923. For some time, he had felt the need for some symbolic ritual that would bind people more closely together. The format had to be one that would not alienate anyone who had forsaken other religious traditions. So he turned to the native beauty of their countryside for elements of a communion that would be genuine to them. And this simple service was the result. It was such a success that it was held yearly just before the summer recess of the church. The flower communion was brought to the United States in 1940 and introduced to the members of Cambridge, Massachusetts Church by Dr. Djokote's wife, Maya. The Czech-born Maya had met Norbert in New York City while he was studying for his PhD, and it was at her urging that Norbert left the Baptist ministry and turned to Unitarianism. The Djokotes returned to Czechoslovakia in 1921 and had established a dynamic liberal church in Prague. Maya was ordained in 1926. And it was during her tour of the United States that Maya introduced the flower communion, which had been developed by the Prague Church at the Unitarian in Cambridge. Unfortunately, Maya was unable to return to Prague due to the outbreak of World War II, and it was not until the war was over that Norbert Djokote's death in a Nazi concentration camp was revealed. From this beginning, the service has spread to many of our Unitarian Universalist congregations and has been adapted along the way. For decades, this beloved tradition and its powerful history have provided meaning to hundreds of Unitarian Universalist congregations. And this is a Sunday that we celebrate the beauty of who you are, who we are, and what we create together. In the presence of these flowers, these representatives of nature's profound beauty, diverse and unique, but related and interdependent. These flowers which come to us as gifts from we know not where, and which we in turn choose to bring to our shared and common altar as gifts to one another. In their presence, we turn our thoughts to the mystery beyond mysteries, to the most sacred, which we never fully understand, but which we are granted revelatory glimpses of each of these flowers, in each of your faces, and through your relationships with neighbors far and near. May they remind us of the grace which we have known in days past, forgiveness which we have been granted and provided, love unearned and shared, recovery begun and established, generosity unforeseen and most sacred. And may they inspire us now and in the days to come to seek and to notice, to embrace and to recreate beauty, to give into the world as exuberantly as these flowers. The significance of the flower communion is that no two flowers are alike, just as no two people are alike, yet each has a contribution to make. Together, the different flowers form a beautiful bouquet, and our common bouquet would not be the same without the unique addition of each individual flower, and thus it is in our church community. It would not be the same without each and every one of us. Thus, this service is a statement of our community. By exchanging flowers, we show our willingness to walk together in our search for truth, disregarding all that may divide us. Each person will take home a flower brought by someone else, thus symbolizing our shared celebration and community. And this communion of sharing is essential to a free people of a free religion. Whenever Dr. Djokote conducted his flower ceremony in Prague, he would say this proverb as he consecrated the flowers. Infinite Spirit of life, we ask thy blessing on these, thy messengers of fellowship and love. May they remind us, amid diversities of knowledge and of gifts, to be one in desire and affection and devotion to thy holy will. May they also remind us of the value of comradeship, of doing and sharing alike. May we cherish friendship as one of thy most precious gifts. May we not let awareness of another's talents discourage us or sully our relationship, But may we realize that whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do the work in this world. Within the heart of the flower, the fountain of beauty. Within the heart of the community, a fire that warms and dances. And within the heart of each of us, a spark of the spirit of life. May we offer our beauty with the simplicity of flowers, expecting no recognition, hoping for nothing, giving out what we are, and knowing it is enough. When you gaze upon your flower, and as I gaze upon all these before me, do so quietly and reverently, with a sense of how important it is to address our world and another person with gentleness, with love, and justice.
Thank you, Gente. That was a beautiful, beautiful commemoration of not just our queen, but the 100th anniversary today. Yeah. Thank you. Next, we'll have our offertory. And the side of the basket that's a community donation to the community is for Henderson House this quarter. Dr. Vivian Djokotoe is with us today from Washington, Oregon University, where she's a professor of criminal justice.
Western Oregon.
Western.
What did I say?
You said Washington.
Washington.